but it's still that element of, I've got this evangelist here who knows his stuff. Let me bring you to him and he can give you the answers. And then when they leave the CU events week, I don't know the answers. That guy did. Therefore, we're not going to talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
So I mean,
and is that what an events week is about? Answering thorny questions.
It seems to be what it's become.
It's fallen into that, that whole thing, and the lunchtime talks are meant to be all about engaging the questions that unbelievers have, but it seems to be engaging the questions that a whole bunch of angry atheists might have, which is certainly a minority of the student population, and so you flyer the entire campus and saying things like, "Does God hate gays? Come and find out at lunchtime. We'll give you pizza."
Yeah, we'll give you.
And you're like, they would come just for the pizza.
Yeah,
you didn't need to put into their heads the "Does God hate gay people" thing. It's like there's a pastor in Australia called Dominic Steele, and he's got a whole rant around this. Churches that put on these apologetic evenings where they say, "Does God hate gay people? Does God hate women? Is God a genocidal maniac? Come and find out Sunday night." He's like, would Coca-Cola ever advertise, their cola by saying, "Does Coke rot your teeth? To our meeting, find out." And you've just put the thought into the heads of 98% of the people aren't going to come to your event. You put the thought into the heads of 100% of the student population, and you've put the evangelist like me on the back foot instantly. I went up to Sheffield University and did one of these weeks. This is years ago, and so everyone's graduated now, and I can divulge the place, but. The lunchtime talks were all things like, "Does God hate gays?" and things, and then there was one like, "Does God hate women?" and they thankfully they thought, well, let's have a woman speak there, and so they had this woman come. She spoke brilliantly, wisely, warmly, and then Q&A came, and the questions were just so fiery because the head of the Secular Humanist Association got up and just pelted her with every question, on topic, off topic. What about homophobia? What about Old Testament wars? What about hell? What about this? And she answered so wisely, so warmly, so graciously, but everyone's shoulders were up around here because it was just adversarial in the whole way that it was set up. And then some poor student has to get up and say, "Okay, thanks for that. Please do come back tonight. Anyway, enjoy the pizza." And I just turned to the guy who I was with, and I said, what did you make of all this? And he thought for a second, and he pointed to the atheist guy, and he said, "I wasn't listening to a word that guy said. But my granddad died 2 weeks ago, and I've just been starting to wonder what life's all about. Do you have any thoughts?" I was like, "Yeah, I do, actually." And we got into this chat, and I had a copy of John's Gospel. He had a copy of John's Gospel. This is what's brilliant about student mission, is that they put God's word into people's hands. Yep. And we got into fantastic conversation. He came back that night and actually received Christ that night. And he didn't care about, the fiery, thorny question that was, his granddad had just died. And he wanted to know, is there hope? And ever since then, my motto has been, the guy with the microphone does not speak for the room. And we think that the angriest atheist who happens to have any kind of platform, that's the spiritual temperature of the nation. That's not the spiritual temperature of the nation. If you've got atheist friends, they'll fall over themselves to tell you, "But I'm not like Richard Dawkins." And they've just lost their granddad, and they're wondering what life is about. And the guy with the mic does not speak for the room. So just stop trying to wrestle the mic from that guy and just turn to your neighbor, because he's got hurts and questions that the gospel actually addresses.
Yeah. And there's another question, from a guy I met at a CU events week in Reading last year. So the majority of lunchtime questions seem a hangover from new atheism in the mid-noughties. Do you think that's perhaps a sign that we, the church, need to engage further with non-believers? I mean, my answer to that is yes, but I've had the conversation with him already, so I'll leave it to you guys to talk about.
Yeah, definitely, and certainly many people within UCCF, for instance, are getting wise to this and being much more creative, and I think the lunch bar topics are improving massively on that. But I was just interested, one mission I went to last year, and it was kind of on, is Jesus a feminist? And what was interesting to me is if you poll, certainly among students, you'll get a much higher proportion of people claiming to be feminists, but something like only 8% of the UK population identifies as feminist. And we're falling over ourselves to get that, as the hook. And there was that talk, and they had one of those things with hashtags where the question was, what's wrong with the world? And people like put up a word, and if it was voted for twice, it got bigger and bigger, and so you had these word clouds. And it was just really interesting because, I did my first university mission in 2001, and then, 19 years later, I was watching as What's Wrong with the World, and the first thing that went up was Republicans. I don't know why we think US politics is the biggest problem in the world, but in a UK university, Republicans went up, and then instantly after that, leftists went up, and then Republicans, and then leftists, and then Republicans, and then leftists, and actually, I think we've been chasing a whole demographic that's been shifting quite significantly in the last 10 years. And someone like a Jordan Peterson is a bellwether for all sorts of shifts that have happened from the new atheism and against a kind of, hard leftism as well. And I don't think we've kept up with that very much. So yeah,
we do seem to be on the back foot, just as in general. You've got books like Jonathan Haidt's, in your reference, recently, The Righteous Mind.
Great book.
It is a great book. Highly recommend it. But we're playing catch up to where people are already at.
Yeah. And all the while, Jordan Peterson, before he went down into lockdown earlier than the rest of us, but before he sort of dropped off the map, he just went and opened up Genesis and gave some really wild and woolly interpretations of it from Jungian psychology and all the rest of it. But he just kind of started at Genesis 1 and worked slowly through it for hours on end, and people were gripped. And so, like whatever thorn, if you invite me into your university and you give me a thorny question, even if it's does God hate the world constantly,
you just bring a friend along.
Yeah, I've got a tract. I accept the invitation. I get up and I say, the great thing is on your tables, you've got copies of John's Gospel. Pick them up and let's turn to page 2. And there we are. You've cracked the spine. That means it's yours. You got to take it home and you better read it. And I just work my way through a passage, and I just try. As I've said, I think apologetics is, contextualized, thoughtful evangelism. But I think what evangelism really is you open the Bible up and you point to Jesus and you say, look, just you see? Do you see? You like him? You can have him. Do you want him? That's evangelism.